Hello, everybody.
Welcome to MBA Spotlight 2021.
I'm really excited to be here with all of the lovely panelists here as well, and hoping to answer as many questions as possible for you guys.
I think as long as you're eager to learn, you have a growth mindset, you'll be completely fine.
I wouldn't rush to apply in round one if you're not going to have an amazing application in round two.
We don't consider age as part of your MBA application. We're looking at students who have demonstrated leadership potential and who have had an impact.
We know it's a process that requires a lot of work from your end. So whatever we can do to help guide you through it, we're really here for it.
Hello everyone and welcome to GMAT Club debrief session. Ramon, welcome and thanks a lot for agreeing to have this debrief.
Thank you, Parag, and thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to contribute here, add my little contribution to GMAT Club because I used it a lot.
Thank you so much for saying that. You had an exceptional journey and you wrote GMAT almost 5 times and ultimately crossed the barrier of 700. So we all are excited to hear your story and look forward to take insights and also learn from your experiences. I'm very sure that all those people will be looking and watching this debrief will get a lot of learning curve from your journey.
Absolutely.
So let's begin without further ado. And here comes our first question. We would like to understand about you. Can you please introduce yourself, Ramon?
Okay, so like I was saying to you guys earlier, I'm originally from Venezuela. I came to the US. I majored in mining engineering, and I since college I've been working at this small company here in the Northeast USA. In tech in the mining industry pretty much. And, I decided last year around the pandemic to take the GMAT because I want to go to business school and, decided to embark on that journey. And ever since then, it took a long time to get there, to get to my goal score, but it was, a transformational journey. And here I am.
We are very happy to read your debrief on the club forum, and I know that it was kind of the tangible achievement that you have finally achieved by crossing that particular barrier. But before we go into the nuances of your specifically the academic journey towards GMAT, would like to more about your historical, the experiences and whether the experience has that you had previously in your employment or otherwise have anyway contributed in your GMAT journey.
Okay, so I work, so with my work experience, I've worked a little bit in sort of the quant side. So initially, sort of the rationale for going to business school, I want to transition a little bit from the technical work to the more strategical work and business side. So that's sort of the rationale behind it. And then as I was going into the test, I really thought that the quant was going to be easier, but that turned out to not be the case. The verbal I think was a little bit easier for me. Now I also I think in general I've in the Spanish language I was always stronger with verbal, but I didn't know how it was going to work out in English. Now I guess what else can I say about my background? I just in my background, how it sort of translates to the GMAT. I work with modeling and stuff like that for instruments, so I am familiar with statistics and things like that. But I was never, I never had to get into the nitty gritty of number properties and all those, concepts that aren't really that deep if you come from an engineering background, but they're tested in such a variety of different ways, and with the depth and the time component, it's what really adds complexity and test your test taking skills. And the other thing I wanted to add is that I never really consider myself a good test taker. that just goes to show that, you know, I really believe that anybody can score high in this test. I honestly never thought that I was good at standardized tests. I don't think, you know, I don't think I didn't score high in my SATs. And I, you know, at the time I was sort of running away from the situation in Venezuela, so I wasn't that focused on that. But the point is that, a standardized tests weren't my forte in my opinion. But you know, I think if you really apply yourself, there's always a possibility to improve, and I think that's the case with the GMAT.
Oh, that's great. And I think, I'll take away that the standardized test would need a structured thinking and structured approach in order to achieve great score. And by having that kind of structured approach towards the examination, I believe one can definitely improve the score. So let's now dive down into your GMAT preparation journey. And here is my next question for you. How your GMAT preparation journey started? How were the initial few weeks? And what was your prep strategy and prep materials?
Okay, so I started. So let me just backtrack a little bit. I first thought about the MBA years ago, maybe in like 2017, and I had a friend at work, a colleague, who was thinking about it too, and I think he tested and he got a pretty good score. I think over 700. And at the time, I bought some. I thought that, you know, let's try to get this out of the way because I'm thinking about it years down the line. And it was a few summers ago, maybe 2017, 2018. And I bought some Veritas Preps books and I did a little bit of prep, but I just quickly gave up. I didn't dedicate enough time and it just sort of fizzled out. Now, come 2020, I was really stuck at home and thinking about what I want to do, and that's sort of how it came up. And I started my first the first thing that I did was do a test on a GMAT prep on the official practice test. And I remember that I remembered from doing the problems way back when. I didn't remember much about the test or like how it was structured, but I remember that I was a little bit better in verbal. Like in terms of percentile, I was scoring a little bit better. And I was completely shocked when I did the test and I got I think it was a 500. I think I put a screenshot over there and GMAT Club. I had it 500 with a V40 or 41 and a Q40 and a V20. So that was a dismal, like just shocking. I wasn't even, I was completely shocked. And first of all, I think the taking the tests without familiarizing yourself or doing anything is a waste, because I don't think the V20 was reflective of my abilities. And it was just that I didn't know like what a critical reasoning problem was. Like I just sort of went through the motion. So just to give advice to somebody out there, I think like if you unless you are a strong performer academically and a strong standardized test taker, I don't think that there's much use in doing the mock. I think you should at least study for a month and then do the mock and then go from there. Anyway, so from there I figured that I needed to improve both pretty much to get to the score I wanted, because I wanted to get over 700. And the first thing I did, I think I went on Reddit and I saw a lot of good reviews for TTP, and I really liked their user interface. I did the free trial, the $1 trial, and I just like how for me something that really works is the repetition, and so they do their program is very comprehensive and long, but I think it really drills down a lot of concepts. So that was my prep strategy. So for the first, from I'd say August of 2020 until for 3 or so months, I just dove into TTP and I did some verbal here and there, but I was more focused on the quant.
Okay.
And then after about 3.5 months of doing that, I the TTP has a structured plan, and after 3.5 months, I think around November was when I finished the course, and it recommends that you start taking GMAT mocks, which I think is the right way to go. And then I saw like where I was scoring at, and I remember my first test. I think I have the data here. My first test after doing TTP and all that stuff, I think I got like a 680, and I had let me see. I had a V48, sorry, a Q48 and a V34, and that was hardly studying any verbal. I was mostly focused on math. So that was pretty good improvement. I was happy with that. And then I went ahead and did the rest of the tests, and I got anywhere between 680 and 710. I think was my top score at the time. And but something that was kind of odd is my scores were pretty. They had a lot of variability. Like I had anywhere from 43 to 49 in quant, and then I even got as high as a 41 in verbal, and I think I got as low as a 35 in verbal on the practice tests. Okay, so I scheduled a test just to, I wanted to see how I perform under pressure. So I thought that, hey, my scores were between 660 and 710. It's reasonable to think I would fall between this band, but you cannot make those assumptions with this test. I can tell you that for sure.
So just for the further clarification, when you mean you took this test and the band was between 660 to 710, you mean the official mocks, right?
Official mocks, yeah.
Official mock 1 to 6.
Correct.
And your results of 660 to 710 was before writing the first GMAT experience.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, understood. That's great. So obviously, anyone who writes these mock exams would go back and maintain the error log and would like to analyze that. So the follow-up question, which obviously I have, is how did you work on your strengths and weaknesses, and what was your learning from the analysis or the error logs of these scores?
I think I kept the error logs, and I went through them many times because I took the test multiple times. And the first time, I kept the data log for everything for the OG, and I used the TTP, their user interface, to go through the problems and see what my weak areas were. I think for the first test, let's see. So how do I work on my strengths and weaknesses? I think for math, my first weakness that I identified that I felt I wasn't as good at was coordinate geometry, and a little bit of, I think everybody struggles with this, with absolute values and inequalities. Those are just terrible. So I think I try to focus a little bit on those, and I think I was pretty strong on ratios and percents and things like that. Now, how do I say it? Error logs are important, and I would say another big thing that helped me was just after each practice test, I think I got a little bit stronger, just because things take time to how do I say it? It just takes time to learn. It takes time to learn new things and like learn how to think properly and critically. And every time that I started over from a failed test to a new test, I didn't see it as a failure. I just sort of saw that I was starting as if I were, more advanced. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but I'm starting from a higher point. So
understood.
I can, and every time you want to improve, I feel that you have to get more and more. It's easier to improve in the beginning, but it's harder to improve as you get better. So you have to get more and more selective with the ways you want to improve. So in terms of math, I stopped using TTP after a while. That kind of ran its after the 4 months for the second and third attempts, it stopped being useful. And then I've solely focused on the advanced OG, and just diving into what I was getting wrong and that kind of stuff. And then I used GMAT Club to search through. I used the search function and tried to search for like coordinate geometry. I would try to do all of those, and that was the strategy on Quant. Now with Quant, after on the second test, I hit a 48. On the first one, I didn't do so good, but I was sort of happy with Quant, with where I was getting. But with Verbal, that was my big struggle because I was severely underperforming based on how I was doing on the mocks. So the mocks, I mean, I was able to get up to 41, which is a great score on without much studying, honestly. And I got a bunch of 38s, 39s. And when I scored the first 3 times, I got a 35, a 30, and a 31. So I was just dumbfounded as to what was going on with that, because it was a big difference. And whenever I did problems from the OGs, I was hitting good percents. I was going on the forums and investigating if my percents were similar to those who score high. And that was so that was an area that I really needed to find a solution. And doing the error logs helps, because then you see if either you are not getting the right accuracy, or I think in my case was not that I wasn't hitting accuracy. It was something that was happening during the test. I was either the anxiety or the time pressure, the component of the test was throwing me off a little bit. And I had to implement some methods to improve that, which I think were successful.
Oh, that was great. I mean, obviously, listening to you until now has been quite a treat, because uh, when it comes from the horse's mouth and when people listen that something did not happen historically, but you ensured that ultimately you achieved what you deserve. So let's move on to the journey. And while I do so, I would like to speak about each of your attempt. And just to repeat what you have said, you basically used the prep course and used it for approximately 3.5 months, and you started writing the GMAT mock exams. You wrote the official exams where the band was somewhere between 60 to 710, and despite that particular band, your first official score of your first examination that you wrote immediately after 3.5 months, I think it was 19 December 2020, when you scored 640. The break was I think Q43 and V35, right? And
Yes.
you have mentioned in your debrief that you're quite surprised from or maybe shocked in terms of the score that you got at the verbal, because you're more confident of scoring the higher score. And despite that, you scored V35, which was in, say, the lowest score out of your GMAT official mocks, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there is a possibility that you score between 660 and 710, but you still scored 640, which is below the lowest score that you had in the official mock. So is it that something odd happened on the test day, or was it out of some other reason?
Okay, so looking back now, granted, it's always easy to look back. I think there were a couple of things wrong with that first test. First of all, I think Quant wasn't where it needed to be. I think I remember, for example, right before the test, I had some flashcards, and I still needed to, for example, look at the flashcard to remember how to calculate the area of an equilateral triangle. And that is something that just needs to be absolutely drilled in your brain, because it's just tested so commonly. And that, to me, looking back now, seems like a red flag that I wasn't as prepared as I should be in Quant. I wasn't bad, but I think I could have used a little bit of polishing. As far as the verbal, I at that time I was doing the Quant first and the verbal second, and my rationale behind it was that I thought the Quant was more anxiety inducing, because if I didn't figure out a solution, I sort of I became jittery, and I just didn't know if I should skip or not. So I thought, hey, let's get rid of the quant first, and then I'll then the easy part comes, the verbal, right? So I was surprised to see a V35, because I think I scored after the first mock that I did, in which I barely studied verbal. I scored V36, V38, V39, V41, and V38. So I just wasn't. I thought that I could get at least a 38. So now what happened in the test? There was a little thing that happened, that I miscalculated the break, and I was probably a minute late. That shouldn't be a big thing, but I think this happens to pretty much everyone, that
Yeah.
that you sort of miscalculate that. But I didn't. Other than that, I felt the quant was difficult. The test never feels good, even when you score 740. But the verbal, I just thought that, hey, you know what? It could have been first day anxiety. It wasn't too far away from my score band, so I just kind of chucked it as an outlier. So I just thought that I needed to study more, and I'll bounce back quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason you scheduled your next attempt immediately, almost 1 month, 7 days thereafter.
Right.
And yeah, you took your second test on 26 Jan 2021. And that's where, I see a substantial improvement in terms of the quant. But again, a shock comes with verbal. The overall score remains same at 640, but the quant has improved from Q43 to Q48. But there is the negative line in the verbal from V35 to V30. So in the first attempt, you mentioned that there was a challenge in terms of completing the verbal section. Maybe you are minuteless. What happened in the second attempt? Was it
Okay.
again of timing issue, or sometimes it was just a bad day?
So on the second test, I'm trying to remember a little bit. So the quant, I think that was a rare. I always struggle with timing in quant, and that was a rare one in which I managed myself properly, and I skipped what I needed to skip, and I got the highest score pretty much that I ever got, 48 on an official test, and I was completely shocked by the V30, just shocked, because I never even. I mean, I scored a V34 after doing TTP with barely even reviewing verbal. So I just, it was absolutely shocking. And I thought that there was an error in my test. I couldn't believe it, so that's how bad it was. So obviously there wasn't any error. And, I just had to, swallow that. And I think, so I'm kind of going to combine the second and third test, because they sort of relate now. I didn't know what it was, like what was happening. And I decided to, I thought that it was just an outlier. Again, you have to rationalize these things. But, I work, again, in my background, I work with sampling and things like that to make models. So I don't want to say I'm an expert in this area, but I'm familiar with, ultimately the GMAT, you're sampling a person's brain, or sampling questions to try to model or predict a score, right? So I just said, hey, maybe I just gotta questions that are difficult, or questions that don't match well, and they're incorrectly predicting my ability, something like that. I try to explain it to myself. And I got the ESR for everything, and I saw that my strength has always been reading, from the get-go. Even when I scored the V20, I think I got every reading question right. So I think, initially when I scored the V20 at that first test, I think I just didn't know anything about sentence correction or critical reasoning. But reading was always intuitive for me, because I read like technical papers for work, and like books, like not a crazy amount, but a normal amount. So I think that was intuitive. And I think on the ESR, I saw that I performed average, probably in the sentence correction, and in critical reasoning, I think that was below average, maybe 30 percentile or something like that. So I had to go. I went back and studied more from the OG. just the OG for the third attempt. And I'm gonna go into the third attempt now and tell you what went wrong with that. I studied exclusively with the OG. I took a break and then I studied with the OG, and going for the third attempt again was really just heartbreaking, because the score is going down, not up. So so and the quant went down too. So that was just a terrible day. And I think the problem, what started to happen, was that, first of all, I wasn't figuring out what went wrong. I just sort of studied more. I was hitting the numbers that I wanted to hit on my practice, but I wasn't doing anything different. Okay, and something that I realized in my third test is that the verbal just felt difficult. It felt more difficult than the practice test. It felt more difficult than because the practice tests sometimes were a breeze. Sometimes I was scoring like 45, 44. But I was doing a lot of repetitive questions that I've done and I had seen. So I had probably gone through most of the official material. So that's when I started looking for another solution. And I'll talk to you about it in a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, those who win are those, who don't quit. And I think we must appreciate the kind of perseverance that you have showcased throughout your journey. I see, November, then January, and sorry, March, and then there is a May. So after January, there is a May. I can just try it and say that where is a will, there is a way. So in that sense, you have passed through that way and ultimately took the next attempt. I think let's speak more on your fourth attempt now, because you have very well deliberated on the first, second, and third attempt, which was kind of the regressive for you, but you jumped back from 620 in third attempt to 720 in the fourth attempt with the segregation of Q47 and V42, which is a significant leap. So let's speak a little detail on the shift from third attempt to fourth attempt, and let's try to do it with quite detail. Let's first speak about the quant. And here is my question for you: what was the quant score you started with, okay, after your third attempt? Because you were maintaining Q48 and Q46 in your actual examination, but in your fourth attempt you scored Q47. One or couple more points up. So that's really great. So
Yep.
if you could speak on the quant side of it, and then the next question we will take it on the verbal.
Okay, so I think so. There were many things that I changed from the third attempt to the fourth attempt. I think, first of all, it's always really important to have that support from whoever your significant other. In my case, my wife and my family were really supportive, and they always believed in me. So having that was great. And then also, in terms of just before getting into strictly the technical, like just not letting the test. I was in the first three tests, I was too focused on the test. You need to make sure that it doesn't take over your life, because if you are a normal regular person who isn't a fast learner, chances are that it's going to take you time to you're trying to get to the top of the top, right? So in order to do that, if you don't have exceptional natural abilities, it's going to take a lot of hard work. And to do that, you need to make sure you balance a little bit your life. And I wasn't that good at the beginning of that. And I think I took care a little bit more of myself for the later attempts. Now going into the quant, again, the quant wasn't a focus point for me, because I felt, I was, again, trying to polish and trying to do that part. But even though I scored a 46, I didn't, I thought I had a bad performance. I hit 48, 49 on the tests, and I wasn't that worried about the quant. So for my preparation for the fourth attempt, how I structured was I was doing verbal for 2 or 3 days, and then 1 day of quant, and then verbal. So it was probably a 75-25 split. Just because I saw that verbal also had a lot more upside in terms of the raw score gives you a higher percentile and it's weighted more. So yeah, so for the quant, again, once you really get to build that foundation and understand the concepts, all you need to do is find your weakness. And the way you do that is with the error log and going through the mocks and try to see what you got wrong. And the other thing is going through the verbal, make sure you not only go through what you get wrong, but also through the problems that you took a little bit of time to more than 2 minutes, even though you get them right. If it took you a long time to resolve them, you need to go back and take a look at that. What else? Make sure you memorize all the formulas. Make sure you know those little things like the percents, the decimals. Like, yeah, just really be sharp with all the concepts, and then try to polish your. Everybody's gonna have a different weakness. I think for me, I would sometimes forget the triple Venn diagram formula, so I had to go back to it. I would forget. I would struggle a little bit with the harder geometry questions, things like that. But in general, I think I was okay with math. I think it's just for me, it was just I never was able to get to the Q50, Q51 area. I was always stuck at the 49, and I thought that, what can I do? So that was my approach with quant.
Excellent. I think in terms of verbal, I would say that you might have an approach that don't settle for an average. You need to bring your best at the moment. And then whether it fails or succeeds, it doesn't matter. At least you know that you have given all you have. So in that sense, I know that you have strategized yourself for verbal and you have also used some other prep material. Would like to know more in detail about the prep material for your verbal score, and would like to go in detail in terms of your preparation for SC, CR, and RC. So,
Right.
take your time. A lot many people have trouble with the verbal, so would like to listen to you in great detail, specifically in this section.
Okay, so verbal. First of all, I'm not a native English speaker. I'm a native Spanish speaker, so I don't have any exceptional natural abilities with verbal. But I've always, I was telling you earlier, I've always been good, or felt I was always good with reading. I felt that was my forte. In high school, I was always good with topics such as history and things like that. I remember, like, growing up, I was one of the first ones to learn how to read and things like that. So I felt that was going to be my forte, but it didn't materialize in the beginning. Now, so going from the third attempt to the fourth attempt, one of the things I noticed, I pretty much read every single resource out there on the internet, and I noticed that every single person who had a debrief on the GMAT Club or on Reddit, who had taken the LSAT first, just absolutely rocked verbal, without effort. They just said that, hey, it took me like 5 seconds to review sentence correction, and then I get a V48, so I was like, what? Like, I need to see what this is all about. So then I started like seeing different I wanted to see what the experts had to say about it. So I saw that it's sort of a discussion or a debate whether using LSAT is LSAT material, whether it's useful or not, because it's a little bit different. But for example, GMAT Ninja or GMAT Club, I went on his website and he had some recommendations for books, and he had a whole post about it, and I read it. And there was another guy, I think, on Reddit that I saw called Atlantic GMAT, I think, if I remember correctly, who had a post about it, about how LSAT was very useful. So I was convinced. I thought that, the fact that people who took the LSAT first and scored that high in the GMAT without much trouble, that had to be something. And the other problem that I was having is that, I was running into a lot of repetitive and doing the same thing over and over with problems that I had seen. So I thought that using new material that was more difficult, was going to be more useful. In my case, I needed a lot of practice with critical reasoning, because critical reasoning was affecting my ability. I was already good at the others, but I was spending so much time on critical reasoning that I was getting flustered and screwing up the other RC and SC. So the first thing I did was I bought the LSAT, two LSAT books, the LSAT. So many people have asked me about this one on the forums. LSAT Super Prep and the L10 actual LSAT prep test volume 5, I believe. And so okay, so going back to the third test, I told you that that the test just felt difficult at some point, and yeah, that was really shocking. So I knew I needed to practice with harder problems, and that was what I saw with the LSAT. The problems were just harder, and I didn't find, except for like reading was harder. I did both the reading and the critical reasoning, and I just started solving the sections. The LSAT is structured with 25 to 26 questions per section, and I started solving those. And a couple of things when you go into that is, do not try to meet the times that for the LSAT. I think they give you like 35 minutes. Don't even attempt that. It's ridiculous how little time there is. I was never, even after doing it for a long time, I never even attempted to beat that time. You should try to just give yourself enough time to understand the problems and select the questions correctly, and give yourself about the same time you would have in the GMAT, like 1.5 to 2 minutes, and try to meet those times. And then the other thing I did, and I don't know, I think I saw this on the GMAT Club too, was I bought the notebook that you use for during the test, and as you get into harder verbal questions, it becomes more of an elimination problem than a selection problem. Okay, so the way to get hard questions right is by eliminating. In my opinion, that's what worked for me. So I just did a matrix. So I wrote A, B, C, D, E on top, and I wrote 36 columns or 36 rows. And I just did that. And that sort of structured approach just added a lot more just organization and just a consistent way of solving things. And I use that for every time I solve any verbal question. I always use that. And then when I went into the test, the little time you have before starting, I would build my matrix. And I think that was a game changer for me, because it sort of it primes you to not think of trying to not wasting time between reading the passages and the prompts from the critical reasoning, and getting used to eliminating. What else? So for critical reasoning, you need to just it's not the same way of practicing a math problem. It's you need to when you practice and you get it right or get it wrong, you need to know not only why you got it right, but why the wrong answers are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So by knowing why the wrong answers are wrong, then you can really make a lot of progress.
Excellent. So I think we buy out two recommendations from you. One is to refer to LSAT material if you're running out of the official questions, and specifically for the hard questions, it's always good to look at the LSAT material. And second, you say that the process of elimination works beautifully well in terms of the hard question. I think we develop our success from failures, and in your case, I would say the discouragement and failure are the two I would say the surest stepping stones for your success. So would like to know more about your last attempt before I go into the closing type of questions, because we still don't have your debrief on the latest score of your 740, and you have elevated your already good score of 720 into 740. So tell us about your latest score as well.
Okay, so after the 720, I was super happy. I got a pretty good score in verbal and quant. I got a V42. I was really shocked that my score went up by so much. And even the IR went really well. I got an 8 out of 8 on the IR, so I always struggle with that too. And anyway, so after the 720, I still felt that I could do a little bit better. I get a 47, and I scored a 49 a bunch of times. I scored a 48 many times. So I felt I could do a little bit better there. And yeah, I had a gut feeling that I had something left. It wasn't anything, how do I say it, like logical. So I just scheduled a test. I studied the same way, and I continued. So the test, so for the fifth attempt, when I got the 740, it wasn't that organized, the studying. It was more I just went through LSAT material. I just kept doing that. Then towards when the test was approaching, I did some more reviewing of sentence correction. I did mocks from Manhattan and Veritas Prep. I pretty much did every mock out there. I can tell you, I did probably the Manhattan once, twice, the Veritas Prep once, twice, the GMAT mock, the official GMAT twice. So I didn't have many mocks left. So I just did what I could do. And I tried to practice math because I thought that I could get a little bit there. And then when I went into the test, I remember, so actually I forgot to tell you that another thing that I did for the 720 was I switched verbal first and quant second, because I didn't, the first three tests, I did it the other way around, but I thought that why not give me my best shot and do verbal first, because verbal doesn't give me really a lot of anxiety because I'm not really, I don't finish with a lot of time left, but I never get to a point where, as with math, that you don't really have an answer, and it's sort of it causes problems for me when I don't have an answer and I don't really know if I should skip or not. So with verbal, I don't feel that way. So now, so I did it first, but I thought that it would help me not to be fatigued for verbal. Just to be very fresh and do it at the first thing. So I think that worked, and I did the same thing for the fifth attempt, and I mean, I was telling that when I did verbal the fifth time, that I got a V44. That's a 98th percentile.
Wow.
I didn't feel that it went that well. Honestly, I didn't. It didn't feel that different from the V30. But I used the things that helped me, like the eliminating and things, and I think those things have to be impactful because I didn't do anything different. I wasn't hitting questions at a vastly higher rate than before. So I think having that approach, is a consistent approach, is very important. I felt the test was tough. I felt that the first 10 questions were manageable, and then I'd say like 15 to 25 is when it starts getting mean. And then I did the math, and then had the IR, and by the IR I got a little bit of a headache. I don't know, I didn't do so well in the IR, but at the end I wasn't okay. So I forgot to tell you that for the fifth attempt, I also wanted to do a test in which I didn't have any pressure. That was the main rationale behind it too, because I had already scored high on a test before, so I sort of went relaxed, like not nonchalant, like I didn't have anything to worry about. If I scored the same or lower, I already have a score that I was going to apply with. So that just goes to show that the mental part is very important for this test, and that at the end of the day, it's a sampling thing. They're sampling and they're predicting a score. So you're gonna have some days where you score better. So this time I got a V44 and a Q48, and I improved the Q47 to Q48, which is not bad. And then the V42 to V44, I was shocked to have gone even higher than that. And that just, I was telling you guys before that that just proves that it wasn't a fluke. That I think these methods are like the LSAT, using that is really effective. And I really vouch for having a consistent approach with the elimination. That helped me. I know a lot of people struggle with the verbal, so I think I was writing an answer to somebody that in order to get to those higher percentiles, I think you need to have some sort of competitive advantage, something that not everybody else is doing. If you're not, if you're not like or super well versed in verbal, so if you're doing something that is getting you over the top that nobody else is doing, I think you're going to score high. So you got to find what that edge is for you and then apply it.
Excellent. Second last question for today's debrief from my side. Obviously, you have covered some part of the answer to my next question, but I'm asking you this question from a different perspective, because lot many people just day before of the actual GMAT exam have a lot of anxiety. And does it mean that you must have a particular habit for sleeping at a particular time? What kind of food that you had? Did you write online exam or did you visit the center? And what kind of rest that you had, whether in between the breaks did you had any chocolate or something of that sort? So I would like to understand it more from that perspective. Tell us about your test day experience.
Okay. I just, for the test day, there wasn't anything particularly different between all the tests. I just make sure that you hydrate, and I had like a granola bar that I would eat sometimes if I felt like it during the break. And yep, just make sure that you don't run over the time that that they give you for the breaks. I really try to just go fast to the bathroom, like just eat something quickly and go. Try to stretch out or something, like try to do some like stretch your neck or do something like that during the break. Can be useful just to kind of get the blood flowing. Now the test day, I would say like try to get there early, just to reduce anxiety. And then on test day, I would say I always did this, but I think it's very important to warm up. So always before you go to the test, do five of each in the verbal, and do 5 data sufficiency and 5 quant, just to kind of get yourself going. I did this for about an hour before the tests, and I think it's very important, because I saw that if you go cold, it's not gonna, obviously it's not a guarantee that if you go cold you're gonna score lower, but I think being already primed to be in this mood can be useful, and then by the time you step into the test, you're sort of already going. It's kind of like a sport, you're already warmed up. I think that's about it for test day. I'm trying to think. Yeah, as far as the anxiety, again, I'm not very anxious, but I think for me the quant is the one that I wouldn't say anxiety, but this one for me, I had to exercise decision making the best, because in verbal, you can sort of make an educated guess, or you can narrow down answers. You can do that with quant sometimes, but at times you just have a problem that you don't even know how to approach, or you reach or something that would happen to me is that I would get some sort of I could be making a like an algebra mistake, and then you're not getting the answer, and then you're seeing the time drain away, and that was pretty nerve-wracking. So I think just trying to be calm, and on that last test I got a 48, which is an okay score. There's a lot of people who scored in the 50s, but I think in that test, I really managed. I simply did not care if like, hey, I saw a problem, it wasn't going well, skip, boom, out of my way, and then I just solved what I could solve, and I got a 48, and it wasn't. I finished all the problems too,
Yeah.
so that's a good sign. I didn't have to rush in the end, so I think that's useful. If you see a problem that you don't know how to solve, do not take 4 minutes. Use your judgment though, because there are some problems that are going to take longer. But if you just don't have the method to solve it yet, or like kind of the algorithm to solve it, then don't spend time on it. Please, like skip it. I think for the fourth attempt that really worked. And for verbal, in terms of test day experience, yeah, I just find verbal very unpredictable because I couldn't determine whether it was hard or not. It just felt hard sometimes, and I'm telling you, when I got the V44, it felt just as hard as the V40, as the V30. So
I think that's the beauty of this standardized test, that they keep you wondering exactly what has happened.
right.
Okay, great. So, last question from my side. Let us know about your MBA plans, and have you thought anything about your post MBA goals?
Okay, so as far as MBA plans, I'm planning on applying in round two to some schools here in the Northeast. I plan to stay around. Hopefully, I can stay around the area, and some other schools, maybe in the Midwest and the East and the West Coast. Um, I work, like I was saying, I work in the mining industry and with technology, and I'd like to transition more into maybe consulting, using the data from these technologies that I've been involved with to provide insights and stuff like that. So that's sort of my overall goal, and I hope to take my career to the next level with the MBA, and that's been the end goal. So I'm really glad that I'm over this GMAT thing, and I'm selling books if anybody wants them. But yeah, I just completely over this. It's been a year and a half long process, and I'm super happy and looking forward. I've been, I got my 720 in August, end of August, and I hadn't even, um, my head was down studying for the GMAT. I hadn't even, you know, gone into the process of, I knew what I wanted to do, but of course you need to, it takes time to craft your story in a compelling way so that somebody can read it and, and get a good idea of who you are. So that's what I've been doing. I've been focusing on that and polishing my resume and doing all those things that you need to do and filling up the application. So it's been great to, interact with there's a bunch of, a lot of great people who are applying. So I'm really looking forward to the experience and the next step.
Excellent. It has been an exemplary story to listen to. I'm very sure that your debrief would be inspiration to many. And more importantly, you have proven that it's not enough to be good when you have ability to be a great. Great journey, Raman, from 620 to 720, and then from 720 to 740. From the GMAT Club, we wish you all the best and hope you get the intended university, and may your post MBA goals are achieved. Thank you so much, Raman, for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay, thank you, Parag. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Take care.